Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back to the reading of Dialectic Spiritualism, Vedic Views on Western Philosophy by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This book is presently published as, quote, Beyond Illusion and Doubt. And this is Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi. We are starting chapter number 5, Augustine. Most religious scholars regard Augustine, AD 354 to 430, as the main father of the Roman Catholic Church and one of the leading formulators of Christian philosophy. He wrote, quote, "Reincarnation is ridiculous. There is no such thing as a return to this life for the punishment of souls." Unquote. Read Srila Prabhupada's response below. Disciple. Augustine considered the soul to be spiritual and different from the material body, but he also believed that the soul did not exist before the body's birth. He simply supposed that the soul is the superior part of the person and the body the inferior part. He also thought that the soul attains immortality only after God creates it, only after God brings it into being. At death, Augustine said, the soul goes on to live eternally. Srila Prabhupada. But if the soul is created, how is it immortal? How is it eternal? How can the soul sometimes not be eternal? Disciple. Well, first of all, Augustine considered that because of Adam's fall, all men are subject to the death of the body. In addition, Augustine believed that while God destines some men to enjoy everlasting happiness after death, He destines others to undergo everlasting suffering. Well, everlasting suffering, also known as eternal damnation. In other words, Augustine said that some people endure both physical death, when the soul abandons the body, and soul death, when God abandons the soul. Thus, when one is damned, he faces not only physical death, but also soul death. Srila Prabhupada. Figuratively speaking, when one forgets his identity as a servant of God, he undergoes a kind of death. But actually, the soul is eternal. So what Augustine calls soul death is actually forgetfulness of God. Of course, until one acquires freedom from material existence, one is spiritually dead, even though still existing in the material form. Forgetfulness of one's real identity is a kind of death, because when one is alive to God consciousness, is he actually alive? Haribol! That's one of our mottos, actually, one of the mottos of this podcast, is that when you read Srila Prabhupada's books and you awaken your God consciousness, you actually live, you feel alive. And I love this. I mean, I'm not a perfect God conscious devotee, but I love the way I feel alive when I'm reading these books. Continuing. In any case, the soul is eternal and survives the annihilation of the body. Disciple. Augustine would consider that in some cases the forgetful stage is everlasting, that God eternally abandons the damned soul to eternal perdition. Srila Prabhupada. This is not so. our consciousness can always be revived, and that is the conviction of this Krishna consciousness movement. A man is unconscious when he is sleeping, but if you call him again and again, the sound of his name enters his ear and he awakens. Similarly, this process of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra awakens one to spiritual consciousness. Then one can return to his normal spiritual life. Of course, one may be, in quotes, eternally abandoned, in the sense that one may remain forgetful for millions of years. It may seem eternal, but actually one's spiritual consciousness can be revived at any moment by good association, by the method of hearing and chanting about Krishna. Devotional service therefore begins with Shravanam, hearing. In the beginning especially, hearing is very important. If one hears the truth from a self-realized soul, one can awaken to spiritual life and remain spiritually active in devotional service. Disciple. Augustine rejected the idea that the various material bodies in this world are like prisons for the punishment of sin. Srila Prabhupada. The soul is essentially part and parcel of God. But in this material world, the soul is factually imprisoned in different types of bodies. In the Bhagavad Gita 14.4, Shri Krishna says, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtayah sambhavantiyah tasham brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradahpita. Quote, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Unquote. From material nature, the mother, different species are coming. The living entities are found in earth, water, air, and even fire. The individual souls, however, are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who impregnates them within this material world. The living entity then comes into the material world through the womb of some mother. It appears that the soul is coming out of matter, but the soul is not composed of matter. The soul, always part and parcel of God, simply assumes different types of bodies according to his pious or impious activities and desires. The desires of the soul actually determine higher or lower bodies. But in any case, the soul is the same. It is therefore said that those who are advanced in spiritual consciousness see the same quality of soul in each and every body, whether it is the body of a dog or a brahmana. Disciple. Also, Srila Prabhupada, Augustine considered the soul to be created to inhabit only one particular body, which he felt was a gift from God. Augustine thus rejected reincarnation or transmigration. He wrote, quote, let these Platonists stop threatening us with reincarnation as a punishment for our souls. Reincarnation is ridiculous. There is no such thing as a return to this life for the punishment of souls. If our creation, even as mortals, is due to God, how can the return to bodies which are gifts of God be punishment? Unquote. In other words, if the body is a gift of God, how can it also be a punishment? Srila Prabhupada. Does he think that when someone takes the body of a hog or a similar lower creature, that is not punishment? Why does one get the body of King Indra or Lord Brahma and another the body of a pig or insect? How does he explain the body of a pig? If the body is a gift from God, it can also be a punishment from God. When one is rewarded, he gets the body of a Brahma or Indra, and if he is punished, he gets the body of a pig. Indra is the king of heaven. Disciple. So the degree of punishment or suffering depends on the kind of body one has. Srila Prabhupada. Yes. There are many people who are well situated, and there are others who are suffering. Suffering and enjoyment take place according to one's body. That is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 2.14. Matras parshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukhadaha agamapayino nityas tam stitikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O sign of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Unquote. A man may perceive cold very acutely, while a fish may not perceive it. So the perception is relative to the body. Thus, the body is a source of suffering and enjoyment, or we may consider it as punishment and reward. Disciple. What about the human body? Is that a gift or a punishment? Srila Prabhupada. It is both. In the human form of life, as in other forms, material nature punishes the living entity with so much suffering. But at the same time, you can consider human life a gift, because in the human form we can approach God. We should think that if God has given us this body for our punishment, it is His mercy, because by undergoing His punishment willingly and practicing Krishna consciousness, we may become purified and progress toward God. Devotees think in this way. Although the body is a form of punishment, they consider it a reward, because by undergoing the punishment, they are progressing toward God realization. Even when the body is given by God for our correction, it can thus be considered a gift. And we're going to stop here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description. Please check out our website shravanamdiaries.com, and we shall continue with this chapter tomorrow. Hare Krishna.